Dave Mainelli is a writer from Omaha, Nebraska. In 2012, Dave came down with serious illness and reestablished some priorities in his life. Music and writing came to the forefront and has remained there since. He's a graduate of the University of Nebraska MFA in fiction and a singer, singing songwriting member of Basil Mills. He's also owned restaurants for over 25 years and has traveled around the world as a business consultant. He now teaches writing at Iowa Western and Wayne State College. Um, How to Be Lonely is his first book of short stories. How to Be Lonely tests the limits of the human condition, and Albert Camus' serious problem on whether life is worth living. Dave's writing often delves into the American lower middle class and those living just below the veil of the American dream. His characters are continually searching for hope when they think none can be found. His tales are made with a dark humor and melancholy recipe that keeps you contemplating the rest of the day. And I'm going to read just a few of these kind of rock star blurbs here. A little bit from Kate Gale. In Mainelli's stories, characters wish for the American dream. We could have God, money, and sex if we could just find the key. But the key is out of reach. In one story, a man inherits $150,000, and you think he's found it, but happiness eludes him. Americans think they deserve to be happy, but in these stories, we don't know how to make ourselves happy. It's always achingly out of reach. Mainelli elbows into Dennis Johnson's territory here. Gritty, working class, middle America, dreaming of something we see on TV, something we can almost imagine feeling. And this is a little bit from rock star Tom Paine here. Dave Mainelli's people have nerves so frayed, you pray for their vulnerable hearts, page by steel-edged page. I see a book in flames. Truth and redemption are fighting under apocalyptic American skies, a holy book of domestic passions by a writer so fiercely graced with insight into the heart's naked chambers, you just sit stunned. Dave, it's been wonderful working on this book with you. Truly a blessing. You were only, a slight pain in the ass, but we got it done. But truthfully, I never got tired of reading these stories. So much soul and dirt intertwining in this book, and you really do feel the characters. So we're very happy to have you here. Very happy to have done the book. So let's put our hands together via Zoom. Welcome, Dave Mainelli.
All right.
All you, Rockstar.
Chad. First of all, I want to thank Chad and Elijah and Bonnie for having me on the reading. Always an honor to be a part of this series. And they've had some fantastic writers over the years, and I know JV was leading the long ago, and now these guys are doing a great job with it. I also want to thank Chad and Elijah for their work on this book, because I was a pain in the ass. But my favorite parts of working on this book with them was the discussions about what goes in and what goes out. The philosophy of putting stories in a certain order, that kind of stuff, you don't do every day. And so Chad really shined as an editor and showed his smarts when it comes to this stuff, and I just loved it. And we got it done, and the book's beautiful. And I wanted it to be simple. I didn't want a lot of stuff on the front, with intros and I don't know. I just love it. I couldn't be more proud of it, and I can't thank these guys enough for it. It came out better than I ever imagined. So anyway, it is a book about about how to be lonely. It's short stories. It came together at a time when I was ill, am ill, but I was really ill, and wasn't sure if I was going to even make it. I was told I had leukemia a couple times. I had lymphoma and other cancers, and I was working on the Mayo Clinic, and never really found out what I have, but they were able to treat me and be functional. And it was some dark times for me. I could be lucky if I got 4 hours out of bed in a day. And, you know, and I wasn't, right in the head. When that happens, you're sick all the time. You have migraines and cluster headaches and fevers. I mean, I must have had 16, 17, 18 symptoms going on. Hands and my legs were on fire. I was losing hair in my legs and my bladder, my kidneys. And it's hard to stay sane. And one of the things that Albert Camus did say, or is known for, and he's known for a lot of things, obviously, but one of the things he's known for is the serious question, which is whether to live or not, basically, because we have the power to decide that. And these stories are dark, a lot of them. Hopefully, they're filled with dark humor, and a lot of times I do have that side of me. But in each of these stories, I tried to really always try to find some hope. And that's why it was important to me to figure that out. I had a song that I never finished writing called How to Be Lonely, and it was on my head when this all came together, and that's why I named it that. There isn't a story called this. Not usually, but a lot of times people name their short story collection after one of the stories. And I had a story, obviously, The Serious Question. So I was going to name this book Serious Question, which seemed to make sense, but there was something about loneliness that I wanted to convey in this book, because loneliness isn't about isolation or solitude. And I think probably you've heard this 100 times, but there's two kinds of loneliness. There's that kind of being alone, but there's the loneliness that's like the cancer, or it's like an illness, that you could be in a crowd of people, you can be in a room full of people, you can be in a big family, but you're still alone, right? And it gets in your bones. And so I that was the tie, that was the thread that brought the stories together. No one, you just don't feel like you're being understood, or you have the wherewithal, and there's nothing maybe there forward. But again, I really wanted there to be a sliver of hope in each story. And that's why the power of putting the stories in the right thread was important. And Chad really helped me, including the last story, which I'm not going to give away, but it was powerful for this last story to be where it was, The Serious Question. And Chad's reasoning was great, and I loved it. Zadie Smith always said that, or she didn't always say, but she once said that it was the hardest thing for anyone to accept was that other people are real, like you are. And I always felt like fiction I relate to fiction so much because we can get, and other people have said we get closer to the truth, and I think we do. We find these examples and these stories that I hope people can relate to, even though some of it might be a little crazy. Sometimes it's like we feel like we're crazy sometimes, right? Or we're out of touch. And so that was the point of the loneliness, is that we accept, we find other people like us, I guess, through these stories. So I guess what I want to do today is I guess a lot of fiction readings I've been through over the years, I always get stuck on reading one story and people falling asleep in their chair. So not that I think they're boring or anything, but I thought I just would give you some quick hits of a few of these stories. give you a taste of what writing's like and what the stories are like, I'll preface any of the stories need, so you're not lost when I just start reading. Um, and if you have any questions, just hit Chad and Bonnie up, and you, Chad, Bonnie, just interrupt me. I mean, you know how I am. I don't care. Interrupt me, and then we'll just have. I would rather have the conversation, to be honest, than read. So hit me up on the questions, please. So I thought I'd start with the first story, which is called A Five-Letter Word for Transcendent Manifestation. I'm not sure if you guys really care where I get these stories, but I'll probably tell you anyway. I was in line at the grocery store and sick as a dog. And I looked over at one of those Star magazines, and there was a story about a woman who had slept with a ghost. And I just thought, you always see that kind of stuff. And I just thought, whatever, it's funny. And then I got thinking as I sat there waiting for the person in front of me, that what if that person was married or in a relationship? Is that cheating? And then I got thinking even more like that's that drive both of them crazy because would he believe her? And that's how this story came about. It's called A Five-Letter Word for Transcendent Manifestation. So a guy who is happily engaged, his wife or his fiance tells him that she slept with a ghost, a spirit, had a connection, and she's very happy with it. I mean, she's kind of like think that to be something she shares happily with them. So him and his college buddies, because they're only like 5 years out of college, they get together at their bar and they're going to talk this out. And wife is very supportive of this guy, and he wants to be, but it's tough for him. So this guy and his three friends, this guy's name's Tommy, and he's sitting with his friends, and the conversation starts going something like, what if she actually had sex with the ghost? Nick said. That one really hadn't crossed my mind, I answered. Do you believe in any of that stuff? Kelly asked. I don't know. I drank my shot of tequila that we'd ordered. I've never had reason to believe. I believe in some kind of energy out there. But ghosts? Angels? I shook my head. This is wild, Jeff said. Maybe you just need to forget about it. See if things go back to normal. I've thought of that too, I said, putting down another shot. But it's been weird. On the other hand, Nick went, it is true. She cheated on you, bro. And with some dead guy. No way, Kelly jumped in. Cheating? I think we got to allow some leeway here. I mean, if you were visited by a beautiful lady ghost, wouldn't you feel you had the freedom to go ahead and explore that? He looked at the other guys for confirmation. They were at a loss and shrugged. Kelly stood firm in the positive. She's telling her friends, I said, which makes me look like a fool. Plus, she's telling people how good it was, which, dude, what are we talking about here? Jeff said. She did not have sex with the ghost. A few days after the incident, I decided we should have sex to see if anything had changed emotionally or physically. I didn't think there would be such a thing as ghost STDs, but I asked if I should wear a condom. She teased me, but gave me some room to be weird. I would hope so, seeing how I sure as hell gave her a canyon of space to be a little flaky. And it bought me some time because she thought I believed her for the time being. Sex was great, even more passionate than usual, but that troubled me and pleased me at the same time. The incident and discussion of the said incident began to die down. Die. Everything I said or did reminded me of the goddamn ghost. But not before I got most of my initial questions out of the way in the first days, which didn't help the overall relationship. Did he have a name? All I felt was Ray. How old did he look? About 50. What was he wearing? Pants and a button-up shirt, regular business casual. What era do you think he was from? Maybe 1960s? How big was his dong? Really? It helps me. It was good size. Damn it. Could he, finish? I think so, yes. Okay, we're done here. But the bad jokes were hard to suppress and usually came out at the worst times, especially after drinks. Like one night when we were out with another couple and we were trying to decide where to go for dinner, and I went off. What sounds good? What sounds good? The other guy asked. Anything is good, Carrie answered. Carrie is his fiance. That's when I said, without thinking, is that what you told Ray? Who's Ray? The other woman asked. Oh, you didn't tell them? I gave a curious look without actually catching her stare. He's some wraith Carrie fucked. Should we get Ty? Eventually, the terrible humor calmed down too. It was a hard place to be. It felt as if she cheated on me, yet it was completely ludicrous at the same time. I was doing my best to put it behind me while she was doing her best not to let my discomfort dissolve our relationship. I had a hard time letting it go completely. Babe, what is a five-letter word for transcendent manifestation? No answer. The water on the kitchen sink turned on. I waited for it to shut off as I sat at the dining room table with the newspaper folded. Babe, transcendent manifestation, five letters. It's not funny. Not wraith or spirit. So far, I have blank, 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 ST. She responded with, okay, then grunted as she walked by me. Maybe you could ask Ray? That's enough, Tommy, she yelled as she entered the bedroom. I finally felt a little better, having pushed my chest out a little. Or at least I thought I did until her mother, Paige, came into town with her boyfriend, Craig. We met them out for dinner at an Italian place. Her mother was gypsyish, appeared almost the same age as Carrie, if not for the wrinkles under her eyes, and acted more immature. Carrie had always teased Paige about her tarot cards and her horoscopes, which was why the ghost sex came as a surprise. So, Paige said with the riotous of smiles, and as she set her elbows on the table, letting her hands clasp in front of her face, like she was about to get the juiciest gossip. Tell me more about this visit you had. Not much to say, really, Mother. Oh, come on, don't be a prude. Paige had on a white dress, and her hair was pulled back with a scarf tied around her forehead. San Jose was screaming for her to go back, and she looked like a foreigner in Chicago. Her boyfriend of the moment was a musician. Craig opened for Bob Weir in 1977 at the Viper Room in Los Angeles, she said triumphantly. Here's the crazy thing about that, she added, pointing her lips in a kiss towards him. I was there. She leaned over and slapped one on him, and I wondered how many times she had told the story. Craig acted humble, which one does upon being grouped with Grateful Dead musicians, and Paige took it up a notch and opened her mouth, sticking her tongue in his. I guess that's what 58-year-old women groupie does when excited. Anyway, Carrie, about this Ray, I glared up, surprised she had his name. Anything you could teach your boy over here? She winked and motioned with her head towards me. I choked a little on my sea-salted edamame and might have tasted vomit for a second. I was pretty sure there was a hint of it mixed in with the vodka and ginger beer. We don't normally miss that. Paige also had insisted on Moscow mules for everyone. Are you okay? Carrie put her hand on my back. Why is an Italian place serving edamame anyway? I coughed into my napkin. And I don't think, I don't want to brag about my bedroom proficiency, but let's not get out of hand here. I scowled at Carrie. What exactly are you telling your mother now? She gave me a sad face. Honey, really nothing. You're fantastic in this act. I can't be certain, but when Paige turned away, I swore I heard her say into her napkin at Craig. It's not what I heard. All right. So that was first story. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Story called Crashing, unless there's a big question. No? Okay. Um, so I always wanted to get in a headspace of someone uh, during a disaster, an emergency, and I've always struggled at writing that. But I had this short story that I'd worked on for a long time of this guy crashing in a tour bus, and I guess I wanted to get in that place where you might have heard or you might have even experienced where you're in an emergency and or a disaster, or you're in I don't know, you're just you're in some kind of crazy moment, but you're thinking about totally normal things, and you don't, and then you catch yourself and you don't know why. It's like, did I leave the iron on? But you're in the middle of a earthquake and buildings are crumbling, or, God, I really love pancakes. It's like when you're in church and you think about sex and you catch yourself, like when you were 15 and you're like, your parents are looking at you like, like, what are you doing down there? And you're like, nothing, nothing. Why am I, you're wondering why you have these thoughts. I'm not sure. There's got to be a name for it. And I have done some digging for it and haven't really been successful at finding it. So I wanted to be in the head of somebody who was in the middle of a long bus crash. And this was like in the mountains, rolling, rolling, rolling. And this is my attempt. I've had a few people actually email me on this since getting the book out, who liked it and were talking to me about it. So some people must have thought I did okay with it. I'm just going to read you the beginning of it to show you how I kind of tried to do this. Basically, it's a music writer who gets assigned to up and coming band, and he's an old musician himself, but never really made it. He's got a little jealousy going, because him and his girlfriend are on the rocks, and he's touring with this young band, and in a nice tour bus. But the tour bus driver falls asleep apparently or something, and they end up rolling down a kind of a shallow part of this mountain. Um, the next time Sam opens his eyes, his sensations fill with flashes of colors, loud sounds, and shooting pains. One second, he is facing the ceiling of the luxury bus, and the next, he is facing down at the floor, hovering above his built-in bed. The pain that shoots through his skull from butting against the wall jolts him back into consciousness. It's hard to put it together when you're being tossed around like a fish in a bucket. But he finally figures the bus is in crash mode and rolling sideways. The roadie, Neil, drew the shortest straw that night before in Denver, which won the back bedroom's second bed for the next 2 nights instead of one of the 6 bunks in the hall, and somehow spreads against the far wall as if chained to it like a female target for a Russian knife thrower. Sam begins a full throttle descent through the small room towards Neil like a missile. An object knocks Sam in the head just before he shoulders Neil in the gut, causing both men to groan in pain. Just knowing what is up or down fails him as they roll to the next side of the room. There are 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. Sam knows this. He is not without logic. But it feels as if he is hitting walls he shouldn't be. The sounds of objects sliding and falling occur simultaneously and create a symphony of crashing sounds. Neil's screams of "what the fuck" over and over accompany the crashing melodies. "I don't know," Sam yells back before slicing his palm on a fluorescent light bulb that once was part of the ceiling light fixture. Blood streaks down his arm. They should still be in the mountains somewhere east of Durango, which explains the rolling. But he panics over the fact there will be a fall off soon, as in a steep cliff. His attempts to look out the window as he passes them are fruitless, and only thanks to the sparks from the bus hitting the red rocks and the half moon that glimpses by every second rotation can he see at all. He makes himself stop looking and focuses on keeping his body from injury. Crashing, the picture of the sailboat above the bed that still clings to the wall above it, his elbow lodges into Neil's lower rib cage. And that is when he thought of Molly's snoring pops. Molly's snoring. And that is when the thought of Molly's snoring pops into his head. What a strange thing to think of. Ashtrays, rocks, glasses, alarm clocks, iPhones. Sam's laptop that he has been spitefully writing the story of the band on, a drum cymbal, the mini fridge, and the Washburn acoustics Sam borrowed from the lead guitarist Rhett all crash into and around Sam's back and head, causing minor blackouts and more blood to flow. Objects are always followed by Neil, who weighs a good 50 pounds more than he does. The guitar snaps in half. Is Rhett still alive? Maybe with the beds being tucked into the hallway, the guys have a chance of surviving. Maybe. Maybe they will be crushed, too. He can hear their screams. A good sign? Just a few hours before, Sam was telling the band about the old days, what it was like to tour in the 90s. like when his band opened for Sonic Youth for 2 shows on their northwest part of their mini tour in '93. Best week of my life, Sam proclaimed. Guys weren't that interested, and the more he drank, the more story faded in and out of truth. Tim Gordon had me on stage for Schizophrenia on the last song of the night in Portland, a place called the Academy. He told them how hard it was to promote book gigs before the internet. He explained how little the bands made. He tried his best to make them feel bad for their shortcomings, even though he knew it wasn't their fault. What he really did was take out his anger on the current state of music out on 5 young guys who had nothing to do with the fact that they had been plucked out of the Seattle pop scene and turned into the next great pop band in a cogwheel of pop bands. Sam vomited his disdain everywhere the night before in a drunken rager because his band couldn't get over a proverbial hump and broke up in 2004, leaving him with a sour taste and all the debt on his credit card. Half a coffee cup hit Sam in the temple, stirring him back to full consciousness. He rubbed his chin that now burns. His breath is forced, and he may have cracked a rib or two based on the pain that emanates everywhere every time he moves any which way. Gravity tosses him into the wall next to Neil. He flaps his head to the right at Neil. He wants to yell for him to grab something, but there's no fight from Neil. His body has gone limp. Blood has already dried in his beard and face. Have they been crashing that long? Neil was a good kid. Before they fell asleep just a few hours before, Neil asked Sam about the different bands that he'd been able to meet. Sam told him about the time he ran into the band Oasis at an IHOP after their show in Portland and what a dick the singing brother was. How he threw a fit over the American pancakes and lit a cigarette and kept smoking, even though he was told by every employee that he couldn't. His brother must have apologized about 3 or 4 times for him, Sam told him. Called him a walking imbecile. Sounds like everything you read about him, Neil said, laughing. Sam told him about the time he got to meet REM by being a stagehand for them because of their bus broke down and he was last minute, and how Michael Stipe personally thanked him and wished him the best with his career. He told him about the time Bob Mould walked into a music store and he was once perusing in Omaha after a gig, and how they ended up having coffee right there in the store talking music for a good hour. Sam then told Neil that his love and respect for the history of music was refreshing. Now, whatever is left of Neil slides down the wall before being lifted and thrown to the next one. Sam hears a muted women's scream from somewhere in the bus. So that goes on for quite a while, and he thinks about other things too. Keep going. All right. I'm going to skip ahead to a story I wrote called Sinkholes. I'm fascinated with sinkholes, scared of sinkholes, and read a story about sinkhole in a regular neighborhood, small one. And the interviewer asked the guy something about it. He said something like, can't remember the original theory. He said something like it was probably China or something. And I think he was being facetious, but that little back and forth with the interview and interviewee made me write this entire short story about a guy who gets a sinkhole in his yard, who's having difficulties in his life because he doesn't know what to think about and believe, and including himself, and he's trying to figure it out. And then the sinkhole happens, and his neighbors start throwing ideas at him, and driving him crazy. And he starts thinking about his life. Okay. Ask me the questions, Bonnie.
I had to unmute myself. Well, I was just going to type them in there. So
No, that's all right. Better this way.
So here they are. Here's a few from some students. Did these writings come easily, or were some ideas more complex than others?
Man, like, I don't know if I'm making it sound like it's easy, because it's not. One thing that I think, writers, especially fiction writers, we observe the world differently. But you know, I wrote a whole story once about a guy who ran for mayor from his and he lived with his mom. He was 40 years old. He lived with his mom. He lived from the basement. He's one of those guys. Because I read an article about a guy that really was going to do that. That's all I read. But I came up with the rest. So just little things spark it. I'd say it depends. I think one of the best things I've heard was from Joyce Carol Oates, who I don't read, but she said, get that whole draft done as fast as you can, whatever that means. You know, if it's one sitting or if it's 1 week or it's 1 month, but whatever as fast as you can is get it done, because once you get the draft done, that's when you're going to write the story. You're going to fix it and make it make sense. Some of these stories took a year or two, you know. Some of these, I mean, I was still rewriting them when Chad was trying to publish the damn thing, but that's his fault because he kept sending them back to me to check over. So, yeah, I mean, ideas, no. Executing on the ideas, yes. You know, I've got a lot of stories in my folder, and I'm sure my mentor is on, one of my most important mentors, Tom Payne. He's gracious enough to be here, and I'm sure he can testify to this, or maybe not, I don't know, but I've got a folder full of unfinished stories that I wish a lot of them I just need to go in and finish them so that I can go back and make them right, finish, you know, because you do the good work after you finish the craft. And so I guess coming up with the ideas, no. Executing on them, yes. You know, sometimes it just comes through you and you feel you'll get a better draft on some, and some of them take a lot of work. But sometimes those ones that take a lot of work end up being the most, truly the better stories and feel the best. So, another one?
Sure. If you had to choose your favorite from this set, which would it be and why?
I'm gonna come back to that. Don't let me forget that one.
Okay. Want another one?
Yeah.
Are any of these stories true? I'm assuming the first one you read.
The first one is absolutely true. No, I'm kidding. So is this from your student? Has read it maybe?
Yes.
So there's a couple stories in here. One is called Migraine City. And one is called The Serious Question. Those are based on my illness. But I really I didn't let that get in my way of writing the stories. I tried to be loose and but write the best story I could, which is what we were allowed to do in fiction. Sometimes the truth can hold you victim to bad stories if you don't allow yourself to embellish better. So Migraine City is based on my migraines, and I tried to convey what it's like to be in the middle of one and how you feel like nobody gives a shit after you're having your 50th one or 100th one. And how you feel like your family's abandoning you, but they're really not. And then the last story is The Serious Question, where the guy feels like he can't do it. He's just like, you know what? I'm a burden on my family. I'm a burden on everybody. It's probably better if I just find a way to kill myself, make it look like an accident. Everybody can have the life insurance. I'm done suffering. Everything, you know, it's like Camus' question. And I don't want to spoil the end if you haven't read it, but that's the whole thing on that. And what he goes through is a lot of what I went through, but it's not my story. So if that makes sense. The other ones, though, all have bits. I mean, my wife got done reading. She's staring at me. She just walked in the room. My wife got done reading the book. She sets it down and goes, I have a problem. And I'm like, uh-oh, what's the deal? And she says, the part about the burnt meatloaf. My wife's been burning meatloaf for 35 years, 30 years, as long as I've known her. And I have a part in here like it says you'll miss the burnt meat. You'll miss how she burns the meatloaf or something. And she's pissed I have that in there. I'm like, it's a story not even close to about being anything about us, but that's in there. And so, you know, I took that from our life. I mean, you obviously take bits from your life, otherwise you'd have, where the hell are you going to get some of this stuff? And then I always tell people when I'm teaching and stuff, you know, you get to a point where in fiction where you might be basing it on you, but the cool part about fiction is when it's time to make a decision, your character, they might make a different decision than you would. And that's the good thing. That's a cool thing. You can play off that decision in a different route. You know, I made a decision, but your character might make a different decision. And he does. And Serious Question, the last story, he goes and sees a psychic. And one of my wife's friends was trying to get me to go see a psychic to see what was wrong with me. And I didn't go. I didn't go because that's fucking ridiculous. I think she's on, so I said that. But I didn't go, but I have him go in the story. So he made a different choice than me. And that's what's cool about fiction, right? I mean, they shouldn't make the same choices. I mean, you want to make the best story you can. Keep going.
Chad, you're up.
All right, let's see what we got here. I don't know where I am on the feed.
I've been lazy.
Life of Terry, is it true? It's a good one.
Terry, like Penske?
Is it a true?
Okay. No, God no. But here's where I came up with the life of Terry Penske. I used to own a restaurant for 25 years. It finished last summer. We were done with it. Sold the brand, closed it, sold the brand. And for years, we had this guy who washed dishes for us. And we called him the old man. And he could have been, I don't know, 40. I don't know. I know most of you are too young, but there was a show called Taxi where there was a guy named Jim, and they all found out he was a lot younger than he was because he was on a lot of drugs. But this guy washed dishes, okay? And he was quite the character. Had no teeth. I mean, anyway, we knew everything about his life. He comes up to me one day before we've opened, and he puts his arm on the counter and he says, "Hey, Dave." I'm like, yeah. He's like, "I came this close to winning $10,000. And I was like, uh-oh. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what happened? He's like, I was one number off or something from one of these scratch games. It's too bad, buddy. And he's like, yeah, I was one number off. I'm not working here anymore. And I was like, you do know how much $10,000, right? He's like, yeah, a lot of money. And I was like, all right, buddy, get back to work or whatever, you know. So it's a funny story because he doesn't know, obviously. And this story about Terry Penske almost got published like 3 times by Missouri Review, one story and someone else. I went back and forth with all of them and they all bailed because I don't know why. They're scared of it or something. But I don't know how I came up with the idea. I think after a while, I came up with an idea of the accountant telling the story in the footnotes. And it just became this crazy story, funny story. But again, this guy's alone big time. He acts like he's not, but he is. And anyway, Chad, go ahead. Man, they're pouring in. Go ahead. I'd rather do this.
You don't want to read anymore?
No, go ahead. I'd rather do this.
Okay. Let's see. What was your favorite and most impactful place to write your stories? Where does the magic
Oh,
happen, Dave?
yeah. I'm not one of those people that needs a lot of people. I think probably maybe you always hear most people actually. A lot of people need a place to write. I'm not one of those people. I write everywhere. I love writing on my patio outside, and and I don't, is that me? And anyway, just a second. Hey, are you guys using my iPad? I got kids. Anyway, um, so what was the question? I'm sorry, my granddaughter's video was coming through my AirPods too. What was the question again?
Where does the
Oh,
magic happen?
place to write. So I can write. I like to write on the patio in the night when it's beautiful out in the mornings, late at night. But I can write at my office. I can write in a coffee shop. I can write while I'm driving. I'm kidding. Uh, I, I I'm not one of those people that really needs um, a place, but I will say that if I think of something in the middle of the night, I will forget it. So I keep a notebook there.
So how long did it take you to collect all these short stories, and what
Chad?
made you, oh,
Hold on. Can you guys hear me?
mhm,
No, you can't.
yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So how long did it take you to collect all of these short stories, and what made you decide that you had enough for a book?
Whoa. So, yeah, probably 2013 during MFA, I started writing these. I think there's maybe 3 from there, the MFA program. And then I kept writing afterward. And I kept writing them as I go. I could rewrite forever. I love rewriting. Norman Mailer loved rewriting. Like he just, yeah, I'm like that too. If you send it to me and tell me what to do, it's even better because then I'll just pair it up and do it. Um, you know, it's hard. I mean, look for someone to publish it. Chad was very excited and wanted to do this for a long time. And so I didn't shop this thing at all. I wanted Chad to do it. I wanted to work with Chad. He's been a friend. And so um, it turned out great. And so I'm glad we did it. Um, but that's a good question on number of stories. There's other people on here that could answer that better. There was another story in this collection that I cut because I felt like it was, oh, it wasn't that it wasn't part of the loneliness thread, but there was something that made it not fit with the other stories, and I cut it. And it felt so much better after that story was gone. I don't know. I can't explain it, but um, I don't even know how many there are, to be honest. Is it 14? Chad? 14?
13.
13. Okay. So it was 14 at the start. We cut
Lucky number 13.
one.
Pretty perfect. Do you want another question?
Yeah.
Look, Nebraska Poetry Society is on here. They want to know what's next for you. Another short story collection, a novel?
I'm working. Well, I have a novel written that I ran through the mill, and it was just too literary for the agents, which, whatever. So I put that on the shelf and I started another novel. Um, it's, yeah, kind of the same line, but I like it a lot. I like the idea, and I'm going to run with it. As soon as the semester's over, I'm going to really attack it and hopefully have it done by the end of the summer, at least the draft. And then I want to take it to the world and see if they'll do that one. My first novel I've worked on for years and love it, but yeah, it's one of those things that it's really hard to get a literary novel published today, if it's not action or mystery or something like this. But I'll try again. I'll keep working on it. But the second one, I had a lot of good talks with agents, but the closest I came was actually Thomas Pynchon's wife. Her name was Jackson. Last name's Jackson. Shelley Jackson. It was really nice. But then she only takes on a few writers, and she just felt like she couldn't take on new writers. So, but she was super nice. I wanted to be like, well, let's meet at your house, so I could have dinner with Thomas Pynchon, but that didn't work. Next.
So this one's kind of interesting. This is random, but why is every O in blue on the cover?
So one of the members of my band is Sam Vetter, and he has been a brand marketing guy his whole life. He actually helped make like the UNMC logo, the new one, and then he broke off and he has his own thing. He's an amazing guy. And we were working on these covers, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to ask Sam to do it. And he sent that back, and it was so simple, just text. And the O was just by itself, alone. So that was kind of just a small little subtle cue to the loneliness, I guess.
Good. I have a question here from Summer, who is quite a good short story writer. Tips to build enough confidence to share stories and poetry. I have no problem sharing my art, but I always chicken out when it comes to my writing. No idea why.
It's interesting that you're willing to share your art, not your writing. I guess there's some really good writers on this Zoom that I can see that really could answer this. You better be thick-skinned if you're going to be a writer. I just told you what I went through with my first novel. I know it's good. I know it's a good novel. And I'm not going to stand for it. just because some New York agents, thought it was too literary, too much project. I guess there's two kinds of fear in life: fear of failure and fear of success. So you better figure out which one you got, and push it aside, because life's too short. And if you get some criticism, don't worry about it. If you get a group of criticism, and it's a pattern, then you should probably take a look at it. That's what I tell my students in peer review. When they get peer reviews, the other kids are probably wrong. But if there's a pattern, then you better take a look at it, right? If everybody's confused about a part, then it's probably you. If one reader's confused about a part, it's probably them. So, what's that reason? Why do you share your art? Why do you not share your writing? I would say find people you trust, share that writing, and then start branching it out, and keep learning. Keep learning. So I continue to learn. I taught a creative nonfiction class this semester, and I completely bulldozed learning about it, and I loved it, and it taught me a ton more about writing. So I would say don't ever stop teaching yourself. It's, I'm sure you don't with art, but don't fear failure, because then you're gonna not do it. Next.
All right. We got a few. I'm trying to make sure we get everybody. And hopefully I'm not doubling up here. Day to day, how much did your day-to-day interactions influence the dialogue in these stories? We do that one. I think we have dialogue.
Dialogue is tough, right? Because dialogue, you want to make sure the dialogue is the important part of the dialogue and not the small parts, right? And I'm an overwriter. I mean, I have to go back and edit myself a lot. I over-explain, overwrite. Dialogue needs to be an important part of the conversation and move the story forward. And you don't want the dialogue to be, I walked into the door and I said hi, and she said hi back. How you doing? And I said fine. you know, it's got to be the important parts of these. It's got to be the important parts of the stories, and it's got to be just as important as any part. And it's got to move the story forward, and it's got to have some depth and meaning, and then someone like Zadie Smith, who can add different dialects, and make it so you really know the person. I also would like Terry Penske use dialect. And Terry had his own way of talking, and so I felt like you got to know him. You also have little phrases that maybe people use a lot. You know, uh, if there's English as a second language, I think it's super important to have dialect. Your mom talks a certain way. Um, Amy Tan talks about that, because I think that's critical, catching a person's character in their dialect, in their dialogue. But on the other hand, it all has to matter, and I think that in the dialogue, actions matter. Some of the best dialogue is when I've told my students, and they're probably sick of me saying this, but mom's at the sink and she looks down, and the writer's saying her hands were tough, her face looked tough, but she was still pretty. And the mom says, I can't do it anymore. And then the daughter says, stop washing the dishes, and held the sink counter. And I asked, are we going to be okay? I mean, two little lines of dialogue, but the action was equally as important in there. So if we kind of balance. So I think all those things are super important. And just like any of you, it's really a lot of the editing, I guess. When you go back, you want to make sure all that matters. I hope that answered that.
See if we got a few others here. I think we have one on profanity. It's
Not good at that.
You want this one? Do you ever get any hate from people writing about sexual things and using cuss words like fuck? How do you deal with that, Dave?
Well, I don't.
Oops. You're muted.
You've been.
Somebody muted me.
You've been.
I usually don't get too graphic. I usually lead the reader to the sex and let them use their own imagination. I guess it has to be important for me. It has to be important to the story. Otherwise, I just feel like it's not necessary. That's just my own take. I'll say it, but as far as swearing and sex, it's part of the real world, and I am going to write the real world. That's just it. I mean, My mom read the book. My mom's been reading my reading forever. My kids read the book. My kids have Sailor Mouse. I used to always say, just swear at home, you know. I think they still do. They're pretty good out in public, you know. So, my students know I just, it, they're just words, you know. But I know that some we grow up, we're told they're bad, but um, it's the intent behind them, you know. And it can say a lot about a character and how they're used. So I think with fiction, um, especially literary fiction, nothing's really off limits. Um, I don't, like I said, I don't get graphic. I'm not writing sex novels or. I told my wife the other day, I think I write rated R. I guess I don't think I get too far away from that. But I mean, it's not really that bad. I mean, I don't know.
I wouldn't look too deeply into it. I guess I tell my students all the time that if that word needs to go there, then it needs to go there.
Yeah.
Because we listen to people speak all the time and it doesn't really stop us and jar us. So it shouldn't in your writing as well. If you feel as if you're putting it in there, just to put it in there,
Right.
it's going to sound that way when you're reading it as well.
Yeah, I have two quick stories on that. I had a friend who wrote a book. It was really good, and she gave me an early draft to help her. And she was using the word fuck a lot. I mean, it was like gratuitous. And I thought, and that would never bug me. It would just go, I would just read right over that. But it was bothering me. Like, it was just like, what? You don't have to say it every. So I did it was in a Word doc. I just did a word search, and it was in the book or in the manuscript something like 375 times. And so I just told her, I said, just letting you know that it's whatever it was. I said, it's in there 375 times and it bothered me. And I am not a person that's bothered by this. And so I think she cut it back. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think she did. I think she used that. And then one of my students in my comp class wrote a personal narrative essay that was so graphically sexual. I mean, I had to tell her, I'm like, you cannot write this in college. I mean, you have a bright future ahead of you in penthouse letters, but I mean, it took me days to write them. That's a joke. All right, next.
I think we might be getting down to the end here, Dave.
Okay.
I have one left here. I'm getting some private messaged ones, so that's why I have some that you're not seeing, Chad.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for someone who has never written a story, but someone else discovered that he or she is good at it?
I don't understand.
So I'm pretty sure I know what's going on here. So I recognized that a particular comp student was very good at writing. And
Okay.
yeah, there you go.
So you recognize they had some talent.
That the student did, and the student was kind of surprised at that.
That's how that's how I got. I did not have an English major. One of my English teachers in college published me or got me published. An essay I wrote. He sent it somewhere and got it published. Really just was like, you're a great writer, you know? And he's like, everything I sent in, he was like, I hope you continue to write, you know? And I mean, I would never even have thought about it. Like, I am. So I mean, it means something. I hope you know it means something when you hear that. And I guess my advice is that you have to really go dig in and learn the craft. Then I mean, the raw talents there. I knew I had to go learn. So I was writing my novel when I was sick, and I thought, okay, I had to leave work. I had a great job, but I had to leave, and I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine who just recently passed away actually said, there's an MFA program, you should do it. Because I knew I was a good writer and I had some things published, but I knew I didn't know a lot. I needed help. And I didn't have an English bachelor's and or a writing bachelor's, and it was pre-law, which I'm not that either. And I went to history graduate school, so you can see I'm not anywhere near writing. So it was the best thing I ever did. I went to low residency at University of Nebraska, and man, did I learn. I mean, my improvement curve just skyrocketed, you know, and that's what I needed. And that's what I think, you know, you can have the raw talent, but if you don't work it, you know, it's going to remain that.
All right, I think I have one last quick one here. Do you think of a specific audience or a person when you write?
Not
When
when
I write, she keeps going, when I write, I think of who is reading, and then dialogue flows as if I'm talking with a particular person or persons. Lines come easier as if you're texting someone.
Well, that felt like two different things to me. It's,
Yeah.
when I'm writing, I do not think about an audience, because I feel like that would completely hold me back. If I was writing an essay, I absolutely would need to know who the audience was. I'm not going to write a gun control essay to the NRA newsletter and come out blazing hot and yelling at them. But with fiction, I mean, I'm just focused on trying to get something down and done. The second part there that I heard was something about when you're writing dialogue, it helps her to act like she's literally speaking to a friend or somebody she knows, and that helps. That's probably something innate, and maybe we take from our own conversations. The only thing I like would guard against would be to watch out for the banal parts of conversations that get into the writing. Again, just making sure that, you know, some of the best writing is like when they just pepper that dialogue in. It's just the important parts, and we don't need much more, you know. I mean, you can get long. I have long back and forth sometimes in fiction, but sometimes just peppering it in around the copy or the action is amazing. Can be amazing, you know. So.
All right.
So that's about it, right? That turned out way better than just me reading. Little discussion.
You answered an awful lot of questions, and I know the students really appreciate it. Everybody appreciates it. So thank you so much.
Oh, I thank you for all coming on and for reading the book. Thanks, Michael Lundy. I'm sure we'll hopefully see you soon. People come on from all over the country. I see people that have come on, and I know they've bought the book, and I know that Chad told me that first run is sold out and he's got to order more. So that's a great sign.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon on the website if you guys don't have a copy yet. I think Elijah is posting a link to if you want to buy the book.
All right.
And we haven't even got out there with a real book release and reading, so I can't wait to do that and get out. So everybody, thanks for coming, and have a great rest of the week. And thanks for hosting to Northeast, and Wayne and you guys for doing this. Appreciate it so much.
Oh, and a quick shout out. Neil Harrison's birthday today. So happy birthday, Neil. Now, those of you who are on here, a lot of you know who Neil Harrison is.
Well, it was Elijah's yesterday, so happy birthday to Elijah the Prophet. And my brother Matt's birthday, but he's a dick because I don't see him on here. So he better be busy.
Cool.
All right.
Congrats, Dave.
Hey, thank you. Thanks to everybody.
Yep.
Hope
But,
to see y'all soon. Get past this COVID stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Lots of friends here. Glad everybody came out. I do want to give a quick thank you to, again, Bonnie, Northeast Community College, but also School of Arts and Humanities here at Wayne and the Department of Language and Literature for all their support, and all you wonderful patrons here hanging out online with us.
Yes,
This is the end of the season, I guess.
it is. So we'll see you in fall,
Yep.
face to face at that point. Yeah. So thank you, everyone, so very much. I really appreciate your support here. And yes, thank you, Chad. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. It's been great. Northeast Community College, thanks you all.
All right.
All right. The check's in the mail, David.
All right.
It'll keep you happy.
Ooh, let's see.
I'm gonna stay on and read this chat box if that's all right, you guys.
Yeah, do it.
Also,